What's up, guys? I've got another meme deck to share with y'all. If you're in tune with the metagame, you might have heard about this card recently, Retaliating C. Let's give him a quick read. When your opponent activates a spell card that includes an effect that special summons a monster, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way while this card is face up on the field, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one Earth Insect monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand, except Retaliating C. So why are people playing this card? Well, it's because of Azamina. Azamina is a really strong deck right now. All the different Azamina variants are all over the place, and their key play involves activating a spell card that includes an effect which special summons a monster. And they really do not want all of their cards being banished instead of going to the graveyard, so people have been using this as a hand trap to beat that deck. And then as a sort of little bonus, I guess, if you can send this guy off from the field to the graveyard, you get to search. Usually Maxx is what people are grabbing with this. So, okay, well, you know, that's an interesting little tech, right? But there's more to this card than just that application, because one thing you might notice is this card has no once per turn clause. And Maxx isn't the only card it can search. Any Earth Insect with 1500 or less, there's actually quite a few of those. So why don't we try to abuse this card as much as possible and take advantage of that lack of a once per turn with Vernisylphs. So this is, I guess you could call it a Vernisylph deck. I'm honestly not sure how I would refer to this, but if you're not familiar with the Vernisylphs, these are a series of Earth Fairy monsters, and they all have a shared effect that you can discard this card and one monster or Vernisylph card, do some sort of bonus effect, and then special summon an Earth monster from the graveyard. They also prevent you from activating non-Earth monster effects for the rest of the turn. So the idea, of course, is we use the Vernisylphs to discard Retaliating C. Then we summon the Retaliating C out of the graveyard with that same Vernisylph effect. Then we send it to the graveyard by some means, and it's going to add a card to our hand. Of course, we are playing Maxx because you have to. But aside from Maxx, there's another interesting card we can add, which is Gokipole. This is a level 3 Earth Insect with 1000 attack, so it is a valid search target. And this card says, if this card's sent to the graveyard, you can add one level 4 Insect monster from your deck to your hand. If you added a normal monster, you can special it, but we're not playing a normal monster. And this card is once per turn, but what you might notice there is that, so Retaliating C can search our Gokipole, right? Well, Gokipole can search Retaliating C. So we can get a pretty constant flow of cards to our hand, even though this guy's once per turn. It's like if we go Retaliating, add Gokipole, Gokipole, add Retaliating, then Retaliating, add like Maxx, right? It's like we've added a lot of cards to our hand, or even if we just add another Gokipole just for discarding, right? Every time you're using a Vernisylph, you have to get rid of 2 cards in your hand, the Vernisylph itself and another thing that you're discarding with it. And you get one monster back on the field, but you are still down 1 card. A lot of the Vernisylphs do have an effect to like get you another card in some method, but either way, we obviously appreciate just having free discards coming to our hand constantly. So this little loop of Retaliating C, adding cards, which add cards, is going to be able to help us use lots of Vernisylph effects over the course of a turn. And when you toss into that, this guy here, Revolution Synchron, now you have some interesting synchro plays unlocked. So let's give this guy a quick read. If you synchro summon a Power Tool monster or a level 7 or 8 dragon, you can use him from your hand as material. He's a level 3 tuner. And then if you control a level 7 or higher synchro while he's in the graveyard, you get to send 1 card from your top of your deck to your graveyard, special him, and he becomes level 1. So he's Earth, of course, that's important. And the Vernisylphs are all either level 4 or level 3. So this guy, level 3 tuner in hand, if we have a level 4 Vernisylph, we can make a level 7 synchro monster using him in the hand. And then he can immediately summon himself back out as a level 1. That gives us a couple possibilities. Most notably, Naturia Beast. So we use the level 1 Revolution Synchron with one of our level 4 cards, such as Retaliating Sea or one of the Vernisylphs. We can make this guy. He requires an Earth Tuner and a non-tuner Earth. Well, everything's Earth, so check. This guy, of course, negates all spells by milling cards. So this is going to be really powerful, since a lot of the strength of this deck comes from the fact that we're finding Maxx almost 100% of the time when we go first. And the biggest weakness of Maxx usually is if it gets negated with like Called By or Crossout. That's what an Etruria Beast is going to stop. Of course, they could also have an Ash Blossom, but we actually have an answer for that as well, which is that after we make our level 7 Synchro, right, it's still stuck around because we used the Revolution Synchron with something else now, right? We can bring back another Revolution Synchron later using a Vernisylph effect. You can just summon him out of the grave. He'll maintain his level 3 status, and you can use him in combination with that level 7 you made earlier. 7 plus 3, what's that make? 10, Baron de Fleur. So you actually have an option to even negate an Ash Blossom and ensure that the Maxx goes through. Alternatively as well, you can use the level 1 Revolution Synchron alongside the level 7 you made and go into something like a Crystal Wing. This is a bit of an older card, but it does have a monster effect negate. So this is another potential option, although I don't think you'd really go into this all that frequently. So if you don't own one, you don't want to craft it, don't feel like you have to. But it is there. It could come up. Let's talk in a bit more detail now about some of the other cards that we're including here. You might notice we have a lot of weird different little hand traps going on here. Of course, if we're banking on a Maxx resolving, then we need to make sure the opponent can't just kill us by playing into the Maxx, because they're going to have a battle phase if we went first. So to make that work, we're just trying to play as many different names as possible in terms of hand traps, so that we'll draw into a bunch of live cards off that Maxx and hopefully be able to stop them. I'm including Saravis as well. This is a bit of an odd inclusion, but it'll prevent the opponent from doing something like imperming the Etruria Beast, right? They try to target it. He negates targeting effects, if you didn't know. So that's what's going on with all of these cards. We're playing Tuning to search our Revolution Synchron, because this card is very powerful, very important for us. One thing that is worth noting about Tuning is that this card is not once per turn. Remember that the Vernisylphs have to discard monsters specifically, so we want to keep the spell count low, and that's why Tuning is good, because no matter how many copies of Tuning we might draw, we can turn them all into monsters just by searching Revolution Synchrons, unless you opened like multiples of each of these, such that you ran out of search targets, but that's really unlikely. Also on top of that, I would like to point out this random mill, sending the top card of your deck to the graveyard, which Revolution Synchron also does when summoned from the graveyard. This is actually a shockingly relevant effect in this deck. There are a lot of good hits off of that random mill. More on that in a moment, though. Let's talk about the Vernisylph bonus effects, besides the discard and summon from grave. A lot of the Vernisylphs have some sort of like on-field effect that is relevant to the Vernisylph monsters themselves, right? Your Vernisylphs can't be destroyed, or one of them, like this guy, I think boosts attack or something. We don't really care about those effects. The effects we care about is the bonus effect they have when you use the discard thing. So this one, Flourishing Hills, adds a Vernisylph card from deck to hand. This one's really valuable because if we only open with this as our only Vernisylph, it'll still let us get multiple Vernisylph effect activations, which is relevant because we want to have as many of those as possible in order to make maximum use of our Retaliating Sea, and just to get bodies on the board, we really do need multiple Vernisylphs. So the fact that this is 2 Vernisylphs in 1, very useful. In a similar vein, we have this guy, Misting Seedlings. He adds an Earth Fairy. So obviously the only Earth Fairies we're playing here are just the Vernisylphs. Pretty much the same deal between these two. Just note as well, of course, the levels. Those are important for our synchro plays. 4 is mostly the level we want, although 3 will come up sometimes because we can make this card, Shooting Riser Dragon. This could be the level 7 synchro we make with Revolution. This card's relevant because it's a tuner. So you could use the Tuner level 7 Shooting Riser with the level 3 Misting Seedlings to make a Baron, right? But for the most part, we would rather have level 4 Earths on the field so that we can use the in-hand Synchro with Revolution Synchron and get our play started that way. So this card definitely comparable to Flourishing Hills, but not quite as good just because of that level. The next one we have here, Awakening Forests. This one lets you send an Earth monster that can be normal summoned or set from your deck to the graveyard, and then it special summons specifically a differently named monster than the one you sent to the graveyard. That is important to bear in mind. Most of them just summon whatever Earth monster you want out of the graveyard, including themselves. Of course, they can target themselves. But this one specifically says you can't bring back the one that you foolished. So you have to bear that in mind. We play a couple targets for this guy in particular. The Revival Golem is the most notable one. He's a level 4 Earth, and if he's sent to the graveyard, he will either special himself or add himself to hand. So I guess you could use the add to hand effect in a pinch if you really needed fuel for another Vernisylph, but usually we're just going to be special summoning him as a nice free body. The other target is Dotscaper. Pretty much the same deal with this one. If he's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon him. Same thing if he's banished, but we don't really have a way to banish him. It's just another free body. So aside from that, you might also want to send a Revolution Synchron. If you didn't open with Revolution Synchron or Tuning, you can dump him to the graveyard. And the reason that's useful is because of the next Vernisylph, the Flowering Fields. This one's effect is that after you discard, you get to add an Earth monster from graveyard to hand. So if you have access to both Awakening Forests and Flowering Fields, then Awakening Forests can drop the Revolution Synchron into the graveyard, and then the Flowering Fields will grab it out of the graveyard. And then, since you would have used Awakening Forests, Flowering Fields will summon Awakening Forests back. He's your level 4 Earth, Revolution Synchron in the hand. You're off to the races with your Synchro plays. The last Vernisylph is the Thawing Mountains. This one is probably the worst one. He's level 3, and his bonus effect is just that you draw a card. That's it. So, a random draw, not particularly likely to be super relevant, but, I guess it can help you get lucky, and it is still a breaking even effect in terms of card advantage by default, right? Most of the Vernisylphs end up being that, with just a little bit of setup, right? This one adds a card from grave to hand, so you're losing 2 cards in hand, but then you're getting a body from grave to field and a card from grave to hand. So you break even with this one. This one draws a card. This one searches a card. This one searches a card. All of these are, technically speaking, breaking even in card advantage. This is the only one that on its own isn't breaking even. But because we have targets that'll put themselves onto the field, it does end up breaking even as well. And then when you throw in the Retaliating Seas and the Goki Poles, now we can actually plus a little bit. So if you remember that Retaliating Sea needs to be sent from the field to graveyard to search, but Goki Pole just has to be sent to the graveyard by any means. So usually the way that's going to go is that one of your Vernisylphs will summon Retaliating Sea from the graveyard. Retaliating Sea will search the Goki Pole, and then this will be your discard for your next Vernisylph. And then he'll let you add another Retaliating Sea. And because you're going to be summoning Retaliating Sea out of the graveyard over and over again with Vernisylphs, you don't actually need multiples, right? You'll summon it from the graveyard, you'll link it off or synchro with it, it'll hit the graveyard again, you can just keep bringing it back. So the additional Retaliating Seas you add are just discard fodder. And at some point you'll just use one of them to grab the Maxx C before your turn is over. We have a couple link monsters that are relevant as well alongside our synchros. In particular, we've got IP Masquerena with her best friend SP Little Knight. This is the best thing to do usually after you've synchroed, is you're just going to make a little link 2 with something left over. You can use like the used up Baron. If you actually spend its negate, you can use that with your IP to make an SP. Or if you manage to have 3 bodies, this is actually a really good card to make. Scareclaw Tryheart, because he is generic, If you're not familiar with him, he requires 3 effect monsters. All face-up monsters in the field are changed to defense position, and he is unaffected by the activated effects of defense position monsters. So you can be locking down their spells with Naturia Beast, locking down their monsters with Tryhard. They won't be able to go to battle easily. They'll have a tough time outing him, potentially, right, if they can't use spells and their monsters on the field don't work on him. It's pretty tough to break this deck's board if you're going second. One more thing I do want to note as well is that, don't forget, the Vernisylphs prevent you from activating non-Earth monster effects for the rest of the turn. So that's most relevant when it comes to your Baron Defleur. If they somehow use something on their turn that you would want to stop, like they bust out a Nib or something, you can't negate it with Baron Defleur because this is a wind monster. Keep that in mind. I guess the same is true with something like an Ash. You won't be able to Ash them after you've used a Vernisylph effect. Although I'm not sure what you would be ashing. In most cases, you'd be ashing a Maxx C, and they're probably going to Maxx C you before a Vernisylph effect actually resolves. So that isn't necessarily a problem, but if they have some other thing, like a Havness or something, I don't know, then, could think about that. We play Called by the Grave, of course, because the Vernisylph guys, they discard themselves and another card as the cost. You can see that's all before the semicolon. That's cost. So if they Ash you, it's absolutely devastating. You've lost 2 cards in hand and gained nothing, so we really do want to be battling against the Ash Blossom as much as possible. So even though we really want a high monster count, it's still worth playing Called by the Graves. Also beware, of course, though, if they Maxx C you, if you Called by that, Called by lasts for 2 turns until the end of the next turn when you Called by. So if you Called by their Maxx C, you're turning off your own Maxx C. Keep that in mind. The rest of the extra deck is just like some random good stuff, I guess, right? We've got All Mirage. We've got Asa the Earth Charmer. Donner. This is an Earth card with a relevant Link 2 effect. And Underworld Goddess. None of these cards are super important. Oh, right, and one other thing as well when it comes to the Earthlock. Remember that Ancient Fairy Dragon. This is a light monster, so it's absolutely possible to make this card before you've used a Vernisylph effect. We don't really have a normal summon that we particularly care about, so it's not too uncommon for your first turn to just be normal summon a level 4 monster, like your Retaliating Sea or something, and then immediately synchro with your Revolution Synchron. If you do something like that, the AFD special summon effect is live. But if you had to use a Vernisylph, then you won't be able to use that special summon effect. Keep that in mind. But otherwise, that about does it. I have one replay for you guys. This is a deck that is a lot of fun to play, but for the opponent, it is definitely not very fun at all. You're kind of just ending on like some floodgates and stuff. So it's fun on your end. There's a lot of like complexities to exactly how you use your Vernisylph cards. What cards do you dump? When do you summon this or that? But I was not able to get a lot of great replays. Usually if you set up your board, the opponent just scoops. So this is just like a typical little showcase of a go first board that you would build. If you're going second, obviously you're reliant mostly on your hand traps in order to stop the opponent from playing because you have so many of those. So here's what we opened with. Not a fantastic hand here, but Misting Seedlings is going to help a lot. We discard the Goki Pole. We're going to add Awakening Forest to get to our Revolution Synchron. Or I guess rather, we would if we had access to Flowering Fields. But because we don't have that yet, we have to rely on the random draw here. And what do you know, we draw Tuning. We've got a whole bunch of bodies on the board here. We can add our Revolution Synchron now. We can go ahead and sync it off with the Retaliating Sea. We'll get the Search. Yeah, even in this duel, I think I probably made some slightly suboptimal plays. You can see that my board actually being full here means that I could have missed a mill off of the tuning if I had milled a relevant card. There's a lot of little things you need to think about if you want to be absolutely optimal with this deck. But now we're going to go ahead and synchro into the Naturia Beast. And we've got leftover bodies. We'll just slap down our IP. And there you go. The opponent has to play through Maxx, C, Naturia, Beast, Baron, and IP. They can't. They scoop. I don't blame them. This is probably a deck that I would not play this in real life against someone else. That's just kind of mean. But to play on Master Duel ladder, you know, maybe you can stomach that. Anyway, leave some comments if you guys like the deck profile. Tell me what you thought about it. If you play it yourself, tell me how it goes, and I will catch y'all later.